লাইভে আছে All right, welcome you all to the 4th WSWD 2021 International Conference on Strengthening. You all are requested to have your microphone mute, please. Please mute your microphone. Dear participants, please mute your microphone. It creates some problem. It creates echo, please. And I just draw kind attention of our control room. Please just have mute microphone, except the speaker, right? And if someone has any intention to raise any question, definitely they'll raise their hand. So again, welcome you to the 4th International Conference hosted by Community Social Work Practice and Development Foundation, titled Strengthening Social Solidarity, Community Resilience and Global Connectedness. You will be very delighted to hear that started on 3rd of April and will be on up to 6th of April. So it has started through a grand opening, inviting scholar, development activists, educationists from different parts of the world. Today, this is running for the 3rd day and very, very special episode, very special technical session on autism. And we are very honored to have our honorable speakers, Dr. Tiffany Neal, Assistant Director, Hansen Autism and Interdisciplinary Training and Resource Center, USA. She will speak with us. Mr. Toby Mountjoy, MSc BCBA Director of Autism Partnership Hong Kong. She will speak. And Dr. Hena, PhD, lecturer in Disability Studies, Research Associate. We are very honored to have our Honorable Session Chair, Professor Salma Akhtar, Department of Sociology, University of Dhaka. We are very honored to have our session guest, Professor Dr. Anwar Hussain, Social Work, Jagannath University, Bangladesh, and hopefully our Honorable Co-Chair, Meghna Minarauddin, co-founder Just Smile UK Original. She will join soon, hopefully. Dear ladies and gentlemen, participants around the world, in our 4th International Conference in the very specific technical session 11, you are wholeheartedly welcomed by our organizer, CSWPD Foundation from Bangladesh. So I'm just referring the session to Honorable Session Chair, and I'd convey my special greetings, sincerity, and gratitude to all of you. And I shouldn't speak much about the speaker. I hope speaker will say a little about them. So Honorable Session Chair, please invite Dr. Tiffany Neal to deliver a speech. And after that, there will be a video of Mr. Toby Mountjoy, and Toby is with us. After the video, if there is any question, people may ask him. So thank you.
Thank you, Professor Habibur Rahman. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and my respected colleagues and presenters. And as we have time constraint, I go straight to the session. And I'd like to request the first presenter, Dr. Tiffany Neal, to present the paper. And she is an Assistant Director of Hansen Autism Interdisciplinary Training and Resource Center. You'll have 15 minutes for the presentation. Thank you. It's up to Tiffany now.
Thank you. Let me just pull this up. So today I'm going to share a little bit about one of our particular initiatives within our center, and I'll give a little bit of context, but really what I'll talk on today is focus on transition and what that looks like with autism spectrum disorder. So there's more information. And so again, limiting to 10 to 15 minutes. We have lots more information on our website. So I've included the link here and I'm happy to share more information should there be any questions. Our disclaimer is here just to disclose where any of our funding comes from. Our funding for the project came from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and then a variety of funding through the US. And at this point in time is kind of multidisciplinary and collective funding coming from a number of sources. As we'll go through today and pretty promptly, I just wanted to share a bit about the outcomes that we've derived from working with individuals on the autism spectrum and specific to that transition age group as part of a supported employment initiative that was really built to fill a niche and has allowed us to work with our state association of Family and Social Services Administration, one of our larger children's hospitals within the United States or within the Indiana University and IU Health, and then other key stakeholders that really came together to form this partnership and to open the doors for increased employment outcomes. To provide just a bit of insight in terms of the implementation framework and processes that we've used to really create this programming network and the continuum of employability and work-based learning environments that we're able to use with the participants and the internships that we work with. And then also just to provide some innovative examples of how we've really sought to look at employable skills and how we can make that a more, or to improve those quality of life outcomes. And then just gaining a bit of exposure to some of the impacts that we've had. So as was requested, just a little bit of background about our center. So my background is as a psychologist, and then I'm the assistant director within our center. We're broadly within the Indiana University School of Medicine, and then also partnership with Riley Hospital for Children at IU Health and at IUPUI. So IU has several different satellite campuses, and IUPUI is one in the center there within Indiana and Indianapolis. We all do, our whole team, and myself included, provide a number of clinical service outlets. And so we're doing everything that we're practicing and really driving that effort. We're doing research alongside, and then also really looking at that outreach, education, and training efforts. So trying to share information more broadly to put practical information in person's hands. Ultimately seeking to provide unique learning opportunities through those hands-on coaching experiences. So rather than just getting information in a didactic nature, we work with centers and groups and families within the state, within our, nationally and then internationally to provide hands-on coaching experiences to really help across that and really to help bridge the different systems that work with individuals with autism spectrum disorder. Ultimately, our goal is to build that local capacity. So really seeking to help people understand what evidence-based practices look like in working with individuals with autism spectrum disorder. And really, what does that look like in each of those respective settings and with the resources that are accessible or the networks that exist. We do that through creating not only local hubs of, of evidence or demonstration, but also seeking to create regional networks with a variety of stakeholders that are able to implement and share information more broadly about their systems and settings, all with that collective responsibility and outcomes. And again, we really adopt an agile implementation process. So outside of our direct service capacity, we serve in a number of other fashions. So everything from facilitating community partnerships, such as what I'll share today, to really facilitating more statewide. So we facilitate our Indiana Interagency Autism Coordinating Council, which is our state's branch of the broader National Interagency Autism Coordinating Council that helps set the legislative and funding priorities for our state in relationship to autism spectrum or ASD services. And then that community awareness building, so everything from workshops to consultation, direct services, and broadly dissemination and community events. We provide services across the full taxonomy of service levels, so everything from awareness to traditional instruction, and then really spend most of our time in that top tier where we're seeking to deliver direct services and then looking to provide mentoring and consultation towards improved practices. And ultimately, all of our programming, so as we go in a bit to this program, is really meant to be strength-driven, collaborative, building upon science and that data-driven process, and then making sure that we're continually working to be both process-driven and also culturally responsive and appreciative of the different resources and cultures that we're stepping within. In regards to ASD and disabilities, and really why this transition component is so essential, is really that autism spectrum disorder and broadly disabilities is among the largest minority group in our nation. Disability affects about 15% of our population, and it spans races, ethnicities, and various other sectors of SES and locale and various dimensions. Specifically, autism spectrum disorder affects 1 to 2%. So this is an ever-growing population, with the last in 2018 being 1 in 59, and now looking at a prevalence of about 1 in 54. Broadly, we say 1 to 2%. We see that as our individuals on the spectrum age up, we see an increasing rise in the comorbidities or co-occurrence with other psychiatric or neurodevelopmental disorders. Similarly, as we work with the aging population, we see that there's a number of co-occurring medical problems. So it begins early in childhood, and then as they're aging up, that this is, again, an increasing thing that we have to be wary of. When we're seeking to change some of the outcomes for individuals with autism spectrum disorder, we see that some of the key social determinants really relate to gainful employment and gainful integration within their communities. So with about 60 to 70% of our individuals seeking employment and a desire to work within a competitive employment setting, we're seeing that at this point in time, only about 35% of individuals are able to maintain steady employment, and that's with supports. So we really wanted to put some systems in place to help improve that outcome or that number. Overall, we see about 14% of individuals are under or unemployed. So we're seeing about 3 times the rate of unemployment rate of our typical peers or our typical population. And with COVID figures, this is more than doubled when we look at really the impact of our individuals on the spectrum and with other disabilities. Overall, again, we see a very high rate, so 3 to 4% higher, or 300 to 400% higher with that unemployment or underemployment with individuals with ASD, and then up to 80% unemployment more broadly with individuals with disabilities. So as we continue going through the numbers and seeing really for among those that are not receiving transition planning services, we really see that even though they may be eligible, only a small percentage are actually receiving adequate transition planning services. And only about 20% are really achieving outcomes that are reflective of that independence and that quality of life outcome that we would like to see. We know from the research that when we look at really recommendations for how to change this course, individuals need earlier preemptive career exploration, gaining some meaningful volunteer or work experiences, and really finding that right match and job placement. Really looking at some of the post-secondary outcomes, a critical piece is, again, that individualization. So looking across their learning profile, where do we see strengths and weaknesses? How can we have a more positive career development or trajectory? And really, how can we foster more interagency collaboration and family or caregiver engagement within that skills training process? So what we sought to do is really create a partnership that provided some of that platform, both for training other professionals, but also delivering the direct service with individuals with ASD. So we sought to find out really what are the in-demand occupations. So looking at some of the research, looking at the workforce development literature, and finding those skilled trades that really span different fields. Providing that soft skills training, so everything from soft skills such as work ethic to communication, critical thinking and problem solving, and finding the curriculums and developing the curriculums to really foster more of that information. Helping the employers was another side of the story. So from looking at what jobs and what the workforce development needed to look like, the other sector that we needed was really to get the employers on board and helping them understand that natural alignment with a lot of the skills that our individuals on the spectrum bring to the workforce. We know that they're strong in visual thinking, are very great at systematic processing, oftentimes can gain technical abilities, pretty proficiently and are able to, with systematic training, generalize those to various jobs and settings and supervisors. But they also really show some other wonderful qualities like low absenteeism and a disinterest in politics and kind of the social chatter that goes on within a workforce. And then they bring some really impeccable workforce traits. So being very trustworthy, efficient, precise, and consistent. So helping our employers understand that natural alignment. Within our program, we sought to bridge that gap from service to training. So providing the training not only for the individuals, but really also priming the environment for the providers and staff, and being able to provide a very systematic implementation focused framework where we're able to train the individuals, but then also successively meet employers, staff, and up to the state divisions and agencies with appropriate learning opportunities. So we provide 3-day trainings for our job coaches and supervisors, really work with our state's vocational rehabilitation agency to prime them for what this workforce looks like and what the frameworks need to look like, and really working from top to bottom for that horizontal and vertical alignment. As we were working with the individuals, again, taking a very strengths-based approach, we were able to set live trainings within our hospital and campus settings to not only assess, teach, but then also to generalize naturally into things like environmental services jobs or patient transport or nutrition services to provide some of those learning opportunities. Able to train the providers and staff within the demonstration settings, and then really across all, making sure we're implementing our behavior skills training approach, where we're able to not only model the approach, but then also to provide some structured feedback after we've provided some of the initial training. And really the platform for that was not only the use of our center as a statewide resource and training center, but then also IU Health is our largest health system within Indiana. So it's provide a primed opportunity for jobs, excellent care, and then a range of services. We worked across a systematic implementation process. So everything from exploring and working directly with the leadership and setting that up, to really initially installing the program and self-selecting sites and taking an iterative approach to that initial implementation. At this point, we're at the point of innovation and sustainability. So really looking to expand our outcomes. We've significantly expanded our funding in the last year and are working to scale up across other hospital and university settings at this point. As we prepare each site, we take a similar process where we're really focused on exploration, where we are kind of participating in general staff trainings and moving towards implementation to really find that ultimate match. So we have not only the direct, individual, and then overall impacts, but we've been able to adapt that as we've gone ahead and progress successively forward on our timeline so that we can continue to provide growth opportunities inclusive of non-degree certificate programs and other avenues. Working on that sustainable staffing, and then continually expanding across other networks and other centers, both within our states and then more internationally as well. The last pieces that we've been adding have really been focused on that community participation, where we've developed more of a mentoring and peer potential component that allow some badging, some micro-credentialing, and other avenues to open up doors to employment. So that was just a snapshot into some of what we're doing with our transition programming here within our center.
Thanks, Tiffany. You have presented a very wonderful paper because we know that autism causes social isolation, social exclusion, and social stigma. So there is a huge need for an integrational approach, and you have shown that how your organization have been working with community awareness, community partnership, and also at the same time state facilitation. But one way, this is very encouraging that 60 to 70% of them are very much interested to be in the competitive labor market. But a depressing picture is only 35% of them are going there and 85% not yet having the transition planning. But this is really interesting to have the capacity building of them. And as you have mentioned, low absenteeism and trustworthiness by having these qualities, they are actually making them presentable. So thank you so much for sharing your organizational activities with us. So we shall move to the next presentation now. And this is Mr. Toby Mountjoy. and Toby is Director of Autism Partnership, Hong Kong. So I'd like to request Mr. Toby to
video.
make this presentation.
All right. Thank you, madam. And Toby actually sent us recorded video. It's very nice message and lecture. After that, we will go to Toby, Mr. Toby, if there is any question. Control room, please.
Hi, my name's Toby Mountjoy, and I'm very, very excited to be here with you guys today on World Social Worker Day. I'm not actually a social worker, I'm a behavior analyst, and I work for a company called Autism Partnership. We have a few offices around the planet, and I live in Hong Kong. We provide many different kinds of services for children with autism. We have a school in Hong Kong for children 5 up to 18, but predominantly we spend a lot of our time working with very young children doing early intensive therapy. The therapy that we use in Autism Partnership is called the Autism Partnership Method, which is really a form of applied behavior analysis. I hope you see in the videos, it's a very individualized approach that also emphasizes a very naturalistic way of teaching. We teach our staff to use clinical judgment in the moment when they're teaching children, as opposed to a very protocol-driven, very rigid or methodological kind of approach. Our approach is really quite flexible, and we train our teachers to really work and teach with the students and to reflect upon what the students are doing at any moment in time, and to make good decisions about being great teachers. And I'm going to be talking about a child, and I'm going to share with you a case that is something recently we've been doing here in Autism Partnership. As you know, we've been doing an educational project, the Autism Partnership Method Educational Project. And in this project, we've been bringing families in, and they do a week of services with us. It's in our Jumpstart model, which is where you spend Monday through Friday. You start in the morning at 9, finish at about 3:30 in the afternoon, every day, Monday through Friday. And we provide some of the best intervention we can possibly do for that week. And we see where we can get to by the end of those 5 days. So I'm going to be sharing with you a young man called Young, and he's 4.5 years old. And he came to do this Jumpstart week with us probably maybe last October, November. And so I wanted to share with you his progress and talk with you through a little bit of the therapy and some of the decisions we've made as we went through the week. So I think you'll find it interesting and gives you a little bit of an eye on sort of what do we do at Autism Partnership during that time, and what is our sort of approach to, you know, prioritizing what kind of programs and what kind of curriculum do we sort of design for the children that study here. Of course, it's all really different depending on the students that come in, which is why it's been interesting to do many of these different kind of Jumpstart weeks and people to sort of see what we do differently with each of those students and how we individualize our approach. So I'm going to share with you to start with the very beginning of his first day on Monday, and this is what we call the baseline, or this is just a period of time at the beginning of the process where we're not doing any teaching, we're not doing any therapy, we're not trying to teach anything to the student, we're not doing ABA, we're just wanting to see what does a student do. You know, when we provide instructions, does he follow those readily or not? You know, what do they do in their free time? Are there things that, you know, they might be upset about? Maybe when they first come in, are they worried? Are they anxious? You know, what kinds of things are presenting? We might try to, you know, provide a bit of work and see what happens. But we're trying to emulate basically what happens in an everyday, you know, situation, whether it be the parents or what would a, you know, kindergarten teacher do, or other family members or caretakers, probably act a bit the same and just see what sort of occurs. The other reason we do the beginning of the day is also just to make sure that students are comfortable, that when they're coming in, we haven't got like big separation anxiety issues with the parents, or that they're worried or nervous about their first time in our office. Because obviously we'd want to address that very quickly and help them to feel that it's a great place to come and that they're, feeling okay and comfortable with being here. So with this child, he was very happy coming in here. There's lots of toys and activities we've got going on. And so he was more than happy to sort of settle in with us. There was really no issues with him, having mum drop him off and spend the day with us, which was great because it enabled us to sort of start to look at other things more quickly. So here's a little video. And in this video, we're just trying to get him to do an everyday activity. This is reading a book. And I think June asked him a few questions about the book, and that's a very typical activity you might do as a teacher or as a parent. And we just want to see, will he sort of sit with us? Will he respond to those questions? How does that go? So let's take a look.
邊個係太陽啊？係啊，喺度太陽。咁邊個係月亮啊？
So this is a very typical response in our first few hours of meeting this young man. He would not cry or get upset. Again, we're not trying to make him do anything or we're being very gentle in our approach. But he would often just kind of ignore us, and just go and walk to something he liked the look of. Like I say, he's got quite a lot of interest in toys and activities, which is really good. But he'll just kind of blow us off, go walk over there, play something different. It wasn't easy to engage him in a sort of teaching moment or a sort of an activity that was more adult-led. He would more prefer to kind of be on his own and go to play some toys in the room or somewhere else in the office. Here's another example. And June is asking him to kind of come over to the table to maybe look at some things on the table with her. And he almost makes it. You'll see, it's very close. He gets up actually from what he's doing, which is awesome. Comes to the table, but then sort of drifts off and goes back to, finding something else more interesting to do.
我過嚟啦。
We also engaged him in some activities that might, again, be more like what you do at school. This is a sort of song. And so June is doing a sort of fun song with him. And we want to see, would he follow the actions? Would he come along with that? Would he participate in that? It is a cute video, actually. I like this one. He almost participates in the sense he, kind of looks at June, but he kind of walks away. But as he walks away, he sort of moves his body to the music as if to say, I kind of like this activity. But again, he's not really following what June is doing, and he's not really participating in maybe the way that June would want him to, or maybe how a classroom teacher would expect.
跳舞咯喎，預備，hand in，然後又嚟，跟住hand in and you shake it out about，hokey pokey，一定啦。
Here's another example. They're doing some cooking and June is wanting him to kind of follow, again, some simple actions we think he's able to do by just following a simple instruction of copying her. And again, he just kind of does his own thing and isn't really listening to what June said.
你又煮啊？
So our first challenge for me is looking at these presenting issues is I really want to work on his ability to sort of follow a lesson, participate more, pay attention to what we're doing. This seems like it's going to be really important if we're going to teach him a lot of things. And this was also reported by the parent as being one of their main worries. And so this is an area we wanted to spend our 5 days to zoom in on. Because we've only got 5 days, there's only so much we can do in 5 days. And this seems to be a real area of priority, working on learning how to learn skills, helping him improve the skills of which he's going to be able to access more information and curriculum that we can teach him as teachers or therapists. So this is what we're going to do. we look at some of the things he's able to do. We figured that he's probably able to do some imitation. We'd seen glimmers of that in the first morning. He's able to understand some receptive labels, meaning understanding the names of things. If I ask him to give me the ball or the bus, he's able to label some things. If we ask him, hey, what's this? You know, he might say what it is. Again, sometimes, not always very reliably. He's also able to do some matching. So we wanted to take some of those programs and really use those to individualize, craft something for him that would work a lot more on his being on task, his paying attention, and his participation. Using those things he sort of already knows a little bit how to do makes our life a little easier, because we can highlight much more those areas of the learning how to learn skills. So one of the first things we wanted to teach him about is, in our world, we call it contingency. This really means understanding about what he needs to do the things that he'd like to do. So as I mentioned, we've got lots of toys and activities he loves to play. He's not a really difficult student to identify activities and toys that he's super interested in. So as part of our program, we want to sort of highlight that, hey, those things aren't always just like for free, because if they're always just kind of for free, that maybe you would not choose to maybe come and do some of the things that might be a bit more difficult, or something more around learning. Just like for my son, if I told him that he could play on the iPad all day as his choice forever, and then maybe suggest he do some, you know, chores or homework during the weekend, but it was his choice whether he wanted to or not, he would very happily just play the iPad till his eyes bleed all day. At some point I have to say, hey, why don't we put the iPad away for a minute? You know, it's time to get some chores done, and maybe when you get done, you know, we can have our dinner or do something else that you might prefer to do. So for this example, we start with something very, very simple. And this is right at the beginning. And you'll see there's a couple of things that June is going to ask him to do. There's a bell you can see on the table. And we started to sort of formalize a little bit the work. We would ring the bell, and then that would signify that it's time to finish the things that you're playing with, and time to come and do just a tiny bit of work. As you'll see in the video, this is a really small amount of work. And when he's finished just those few things that he needs to do, he's done and he can get to leave. Now you'll see in this video, he's not looking super energetic in following June's instructions. You see him laugh a lot. We had this quite often at the very, very beginning of the first day, when we started to make some demands or ask him to do some tasks. He would often get into this kind of giggling when he was doing these kinds of tasks. He still does the work, you know, as you'll see, but the quality of his participation is not really that great. But I think at this point he still doesn't really understand what's going on. I'm not sure he really understands that, you know, doing this work, what that results in, or like what's the purpose of that? Why do I need to listen to June? He's still kind of learning at this point, which is why I think we get a lot of this kind of more goofy behavior of him kind of laughing and not paying like super great attention. Anyway, have a look. This is the very beginnings of us having him understand some of this.
好，過嚟上堂。哇，好叻仔，即刻過嚟上堂。好，玩砌圖啊！中完啦。
Now we went on to also use kind of like materials as tokens. So, you know, in this next clip, you'll see June working with him with some picture cards, and she's having him, you know, do some labeling activities with those. And as he labels them, the cards get, you know, taken away as similar to be tokens. This is a slightly different kind of contingency, but is also something we were teaching him on the first day.
呢個係啦，好啦，麵包。哦，奇異果係啦。做嘢。
So in this next clip, you'll see us also doing a task around, you know, giving him some instructions about labels, like find the ball, etc. And he needs to put the things into a basket, and when all the things have gone in the basket, we're finished. You'll see Nicole is also providing a little bit of guidance to know that when he's finished one instruction, that just to wait until she issues the next one. Otherwise, what he'll do is he'll just put all the things in the box and not listen to what we say, so that he can be finished and done. So it's important that he understands, hey, just wait for the teacher to let you know when is the next thing you need to put in. Wait and listen. Okay, this is an important skill. But you'll notice in this video already, this is probably about an hour and a half into the first day of training. He's already a bit sharper. You see his attention is a little bit more directed to the materials. He's listening quite nicely. The giggling is kind of subdued a lot. Like, we didn't tackle that at all. We just kind of focused on what we wanted him to do. And he's starting to look a little sharper at this point. So this is a nice clip, even though Nicole is still kind of providing a little bit of guidance with this task.
水樽，等，係啦，杯，係，等一陣，紙巾，係喎，再等多陣，係啦，匙羹。做晒啦，係喎，等待會啱啲喎。
Now, I'm going to throw this next video in just because I thought it was quite cute video of this kid, of Young. And as you knew, right, we'd been working on him transiting from, preferred activities to come to do some work with us. And I like this clip. This is towards the end of the week, so I've sort of jumped a little bit, but it's an illustration of us continuing to work on this kind of transitional skill of like doing some play and then coming to work. And you'll see Justin in this clip. We're in the big area of our office, which is really distracting and full of like a lot of amazing toys. And when Justin says, hey, it's time to work, I watched the video. I thought, where is he? And then you see this little head poke out from behind this pillar, like really far away. And you see him kind of come all the way back to come and sit with Justin to get started. I was impressed by that because, he could have got distracted so easily on the way there or just decided to stay where he was. The fact that he was able to pick that out and come, all the way over, I think is quite an interesting clip. So anyway, this is towards the end of the week at this point, but I just throw it in because I thought it was quite a cute clip. Now I'm going to jump now to day 2, just because I want to include just a little clip of a skill we were working on around his waiting, okay? And again, one of the problems we had when we work with him is that he would often grab the materials in front of him, or if we're reading a book, he would start turning the page before it was time, or he would be doing something else with some materials rather than listen to what we, wanted him to do or what to follow. We wanted him to learn a little bit about waiting, a little bit impulse control, being able to stop doing something that he enjoyed doing and orientating towards the teacher. So it was a really short program, but it, basically is teaching him how to wait. And in this video, you'll see Nicole doing that with him. You'll see in the beginning, she rings the bell again, which is kind of a bit more of a demanding instruction, like, oh, something's happening. She pairs that with her saying, wait. You'll see as we get to the end of the video, she doesn't use the bell anymore. She just asks him to wait. And he's quite good at listening and stopping what he's doing, orientating to the teacher to find out, hey, what's going on? What is there something I need to do right now? Sometimes Nicole gives another instruction related to what he was doing. The delay of how long he has to wait is very quick. As we went through the week, it became longer. But you'll be able to see how we taught him just how to wait around play activities in this next clip.
等一等，係喎，幫我出紙巾啦。唔該晒，抹下先。好啦，繼續玩啦。等一等。哇！即刻停㗎喎，好叻喎！呢個叫做咖啡機。咖啡機，好啦，即係你。 打緊。哇，好叻喎！即刻停㗎喎。係因為太濕啦，抹一抹先啦。
Okay, so now we're going to focus on what we sort of spent more of our time on during the week, which is really around his attention, paying attention, staying on task, and how do we increase that level of participation, get him a little sharper, being able to work really efficiently with the teachers. This is really beginning of the second day, I think, right in the morning. And in this clip, you'll see Nicole is now continuing on from the work we did on day one, using the materials to do some labeling. It's still kind of working around completing the things that are on the table. And she's asking him to label some of these objects. And you'll see a slight diversion at this point. His participation is quite good and he's quite eager and sharp in this clip, which is great. I think he really understands what's going on now and what it is he needs to do. And you'll see that Nicole right at the end picks up a pair of shoes and asks him what the shoes are. I think this is quite an important diversion because up till now, all the work has been done very much in front of him, very easy for him to attend to. So she deliberately picks up these shoes from over here. It's a little bit more unpredictable because I think he thinks we're going to just use the things that are on the table, but it helps him to understand, anything could happen here, and starts the process of him having to pay a little bit more attention than we have been doing on the first day. So have a look.
咩嚟㗎？
冇，
哦，
加水，
水，
香蕉，是海，
係 perfect，叻仔。
Here's another example of a task we were doing on the second day. I think this is more towards the afternoon. And June's doing a matching task. But this one is a little bit different in the sense it's really what we call find the same. And what she does is she holds up an object for him to see, and then he has to find the same one where he is. So that's not a difficult task because like finding the same thing, I don't think is a difficult challenge for him. But this task can be made quite difficult because we're going to show it. Maybe we only show it for a short period of time, and then he's got to remember it. And then he's also got to look and find those things where he is on the table. That can be a very simple task, as I'm going to illustrate in the next video, but it can also be very difficult. I can just show the object very quick. The array of things he can choose from might be like 20 different objects, and I've got to really scan, or the objects might be all around me. So it can actually be a really complicated, challenging task that works on memory, paying attention. You don't know when the object's going to be shown, so got to be really orientated. Can be a good task, but this is one of the things we did with him, and you can see how June did that with him.
好啦，葉弟，我哋睇下做啲咩咯
Mass. Touch it. Touch it. Touch it. Touch you.
June also did a little bit of what we call like a fluency task, and it's good to teach students sometimes to do things more on their own, rather than always have to give an instruction and then give a response and then the teacher, something that can be a bit more student directed. So this is a very beginning, again, I think on day 2, and June is just helping him to, do some labeling, but do it on his own. So there's 3 cards. She provides a bit of help with the first one, but what we'd love him to do is as he picks up the cards to label them and put them away and do that by himself, without the need of a helper to keep asking him questions and give instructions. Again, this task can be expanded greatly to like having many more things, or if you're doing matching, it might be to sort things, go and find things, maybe you have a little basket and put the things where they're supposed to go. So it's an example of doing more of a sort of chained behavior where you're doing more than one thing for one instruction, and helps to develop skills of staying on task without, being instructed, to complete things without supervision, which are quite important for kids at 4.5 when they're going to school or doing things at home.
好啦，你自己開始讀咯喎。
沙拉，
西蘭花係啦，
插翅，
提子，
西瓜，
西瓜。哇，做完咁叻嘅！
All right, we're moving along a little bit now, and this is probably day 3. And now Nicole has started to think about how we can get him to be a bit more mobile in the office. We don't always want to be sat in a chair, and we know for a fact that when we start to do activities with him that are when we move around the office a little bit more, sometimes he gets more easily distracted. You know, he might find things to do or wander away. Obviously, if you're sat down, it's, you know, more effort to get up and go and do that. Whereas when you're stood up, it's quite easy. So we wanted him to be good at, you know, participating in activities where we're stood up and maybe walking around and doing things in the office. So this is a similar task, which is doing some labeling using that skill he has already. And now Nicole has put things on the wall. He's having to stand up. Nicole's a little further away from him, and she's having him complete all of the tasks in one go. So again, he's got to really stay on task and pay attention to what Nicole is pointing to and what she's doing. And so this is a little bit more difficult than the things we've been doing, not from a labeling standpoint, but from being able to stand still, being able to watch, pay attention, not be distracted or go off and find other things to do. That's what we're working on this week. So here's a clip of Nicole doing that.
係喎，幾定定喎，好睇下啲咩咯喎？呢個係
Ice cream.
ice cream，
香蕉。
香蕉、
西瓜。
西瓜、
粟米。
粟米，最後係 fish 魚，叻叻。
Yeah.
To work more on that, you know, we'll do some stuff where we're going to be walking around the office and maybe giving some simple instructions. In this video, you'll see he's having to sort of tag June, which is a good social awareness task, you know, like tracking the person. If they stopped, oh, they've stopped, I should stop too. You know, they're going to go over there, I should follow. You know, tracking and paying attention to the other person. It's a really good skill that we often teach too, just from a standpoint of community safety. When we're out in the community, teaching children to kind of stay with us and not run into the road or go across the crossing, you know, be aware of where we are and stay with us. But in this example, it's really, again, just having him increase his ability to participate with us, even though there's a lot of, you know, distractions going on. So June's instructions are quite simple. You'll see, but he does a good job of sticking with her, being aware of her and following her and being able to undertake her instruction.
係喎，好啦，等等，係啦，過嚟，呢個咩嚟㗎？
書包。
係喎，有你個書包喺度嘅，幫我攞書包過嚟。係啦，過嚟俾我。好啦，唔該晒。好啦，我哋行呢邊啦，繼續。你坐喺度。過嚟呢邊啦，好嘅。坐低。你睇下，咩嚟㗎？
拉水。
水係喎，好啦，個水咧唔好擺喺度啦，擺翻去書包入邊先。快啲！唔係飲，擺入去。係啦，擺入去，係，幫我擺入去啊。
So to go back to that task where we were teaching him to do the imitation of actions, again, this is a really good task to work with him being around the room and not like, you know, sat in a chair. So we worked on that. You'll see in this first clip, Nicole has got him sort of stood on a little mat. That was just to give him a sense of like, we want you to stand here and not just walk all the way around. And she's doing some simple actions with him for a very short duration that he's able to do. You'll see in the next clip, we take away the mat. He's not doing that. He's in the sort of classroom that we use and does very well, copying all the actions and engaging in that activity. And I think there's a little smile on his face at the end. I don't know whether that's because he thought he was done or whether he sort of starting to like that activity a little bit, which was nice to see.
我哋一齊唱歌咯喎！1、2、3 Everybody in, everybody out, everybody stop, 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 everybody shout. Yeah! 好勁喎！ If you're happy and you know it, point to your nose. If you're happy and you know it, tap your feet. If you're happy and you know it, then you really have to show it. If you're happy and you know
We're probably on about day 4 now. And we also wanted to simulate a little bit of some classroom environments, you know, so we have a classroom here. Now for him, there aren't many other kids in that classroom just yet. And we're just starting some of the kind of lessons or things that may look like a bit of a lesson. So you'll see in this one, he sat at a table, which might be quite common for his age in Hong Kong anyway. There's a sort of big board, which would be typical in maybe like a circle time activity, something similar. June sat quite far away from him. And she's teaching him some new labels. You'll see at this point, we're not really clearing the field, so it's unclear to him how much work he needs to do, which is good because in prior lessons you'll have noticed he always knows exactly how many things he needs to do. That's probably much more motivating when you're not quite sure how long the lesson's going to be. Sometimes that might be discouraging or lead to students maybe not being quite as attentive, depending on how you do it. But you'll see June introduces the labels, goes back. He's loud, he pays really good attention to what June is pointing to. And I think is a good lesson to demonstrate some really solid progress in the areas of his attention and participation.
係喎，我哋黐晒啲卡咯喎，跟住我讀一次，呢個咩嚟㗎？蛋，係啦，提子，嚟一次，提子係啦，呢個西瓜，嚟一次，咩嚟㗎？
西瓜。
西瓜，最後呢個咩嚟㗎？我有嘗試啦，我哋一齊讀水，
水。
係喎，嚟一次，
水。
水呢個咧？蛋。蛋。提子。
西瓜。
讀得好好。
Here's another lesson that we did in the big area, and this is working on his scanning. And again, being in a more natural environment, like in the beginning on the first day, he loved to touch all the fruits and the food. He likes to play with that. So it's really difficult to instruct him in that kind of situation. But you'll see now, wow, very good. I think this might have even been the last day. Nicole is asking him to retrieve a lot of different items. And he really looks very carefully for each one. You know, if it wasn't in front of him, he orientates over there and he finds something underneath. There's a lot of things in that small area. So he's got to really look carefully and patiently to be able to carry out Nicole's instruction.
靚仔喎，好啦，做呢個咯喎。
Also, day 5 is another matching task. This is sort of where we got to with matching. And here June has got a board of things and then some pictures that need to be matched. And she's going to point at which one it is. And he's going to go find it and come and match it. You'll see the activity goes for quite some time. And again, he's paying really good attention to June and working really, really well with her in this clip.
係喎，跟住講鬼，係喎隻鬼呢度，跟住呢個。係啊，睇清楚我指乜嘢啊？呢個狗，係啊，狗仔啦，好啦，我哋繼續咯喎。好好嘅嗰個睇先，啱先咧。哇，好專心喎！呢個係屋，係啦。 跟住我，跟住我要西瓜，呢個係腳，係啦。
So I was quite pleased with the progress we were able to make in the 5 days. I think that Young was certainly much more easy to teach by the 5th day. It really opened our eyes to like there's probably quite a lot of different curriculum that we could really start to teach him in terms of increasing his vocabulary, starting to look at some play skills, looking at maybe how he might operate in a small group, what skills he might need to be able to do that. There are lots and lots of things that we potentially could kind of come up with at this point, but again, it was really good to just take the time to really focus on some of those core skills for this week. And I think this is really a hallmark of how we operate and look at therapy. I think these skills are really, really critical for students to really make good progress in the long run. I know it's not working on maybe things that we always would love to see immediately, but I think the time put in to work on these skills can really pay off over time. And not all children learn as maybe quickly as young. Sometimes we have to spend considerably more time in developing these kinds of skills. So thank you very much for watching my talk. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to be around for the panel if you have questions for me. But you can also find out more about our organization at this address if you're interested to learn more about what we do. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Toby, for presenting the video and showing how to do the things very practical way you do. And I think the most important part of this presentation and the whole therapy is very individualistic and for the early childhood. And as we know that our early childhood experiences actually matter a lot. And as you mentioned, that may not be seen in a very immediate way, but obviously in the long run, that will be helpful. And I think most important issue is that this is the way a child is learning life skill in a very natural setting and everyday children's life. So thank you so much. And at the same time, as you said, that learning contingency and the cognitive world is changing. Thanks a lot. And as you are there, I hope that in the question and answer session, we shall have more queries regarding that. And thanks for being there. Shall we move to the next presentation, or if Toby and Mr. Toby can like to add something? Professor Habib?
Madam, as we have another speaker, so I think it's better as there is no question still.
Okay. So now we move on to the last presentation of this session. Dr. Hina, she is a lecturer in disability studies and a research associate. So I'd like to request Dr. Hina to do the presentation.
Thank you very much, Dr. Habibur Rahman and all the organizers for this wonderful program. I'm so happy and privileged to be a part of this team. I'm working at the Inter-University Center for Disability Studies, Mahatma Gandhi University, Kottayam, Kerala. And I have been there from 2011. And we are doing a lot of work related to persons with disabilities, especially research, training, and extension activities. I'll share a brief video of our center. Ma'am, am I audible now? Am I audible? Okay. Okay. Thank you so much. But I'm not getting your voice. So I don't know what happened. Till now, I was.
I think it's fine. Yeah, we can hear you now.
Thank you. Thank you. So a very good evening to each and everyone here in the group. And thank you very much to the coordinators for inviting us for this wonderful program. And I'm Dr. Hina, working at the Inter-University Center for Disability Studies, Mahatma Gandhi University, Kottayam, Kerala. And I have been working with the center from 2011. Now we have done a lot of work for persons with disabilities, especially children with disabilities. We have a course called MPhil Disability Studies and so many short-term programs we are conducting. A brief video of our center is shared in the chat box. Those who are interested can go through the video. Let me come to the presentation now. I think I can share my screen. I hope all can see my screen. Is it visible, sir?
Not yet. It's starting.
No, not yet.
Now?
Yeah, we can see this.
Okay. Thank you very much for this opportunity, Dr. Habibur Rahman and all other coordinators. The topic is inclusive response for children with autism spectrum disorders during COVID-19 issues and challenges. We are the first pioneer center in the state to conduct a training on strengthening emergency response capabilities of differently able people in Kerala. And through the project, we have trained around 3,000 persons with different disabilities in inclusive disaster risk reduction. The project was conducted by Kerala State Disaster Management Authority, and we could help a lot of persons with disabilities during COVID, during the floods in 2018 and during the COVID season, and also before that we were hit with a Nipah pandemic, but not spread over. And after that, we faced OKI and all these programs, like all these disasters. Before all these disasters, we could provide training for persons with disabilities. Around 3,000 persons, but it was a fair number in Kerala as far as Kerala is concerned. And in that experience, I was the coordinator of the program. So with that experience, I'm trying to share my experience with children with intellectual disabilities, especially children with COVID-19. This is the scenario of disability in India. 1.67% of the 0 to 19 population have a disability. About 35.29% were children in that criteria. Then only 1% of children with disabilities have access to school, and undernutrition is one of the severe problems of these children with disabilities. And in India, 80% of the children with disabilities will not survive past 4. And disabilities in Kerala, around 7 lakh people are disabled in Kerala. Out of this, 1/3 of are children with disabilities, and which are the most vulnerable group in our society. And inclusive ERR is not a familiar concept in Kerala public domain. That was the situation why we were entering into this particular program. And these were the existing challenges in disability sector in India. The first thing was need for dignified life for children and people with disabilities, need to remove attitudinal barriers among communities and provide rehabilitation of children with disabilities, need to improve infrastructure in mainstream schools to make them disabled friendly and train teachers for optimal support, need to converge between various departments providing services, need for national harmonization of disability welfare programs, and need to give executive powers and necessary resources to the Commissioner of Disabilities for effective implementation and safeguarding rights of persons with disabilities. Need for promoting and monitoring mechanism for service outreach below district level. Need to improve effective collaborations between government and NGOs to avoid duplications. Need to adapt to a down-to-top approach in policy design. Need to improve community participation programs. And as far as autism is concerned, it's a lifelong non-progressive and neurological disorders typically appearing before the age of 3 years. So while this COVID-19 hit the world, it was so difficult for children with disabilities, especially for children with autism spectrum disorders, to cope with the scenario, especially for parents to manage their free time, providing structural activities, and more frequent behavioral problems they began to express. And there was a huge gap between the rehabilitation service provision for children with autism spectrum disorders. And many of parents reported a lot of issues related to sexual aspects of children with disabilities. So these are a very direct, very complicated problem which we try to face, and we try to address. As a center in excellence in disability studies, we try to interact with the parents of children with autism, and there is a Apex organization for persons with for the parents of children with autism, which is called Parivar, and they are constantly in connection with our center to get advisors, to provide services, data, etc. And on that context, we started data information desk in connection with the associated college here in Kerala, and it was running very well, and people can directly approach persons with, approach the experts in the field of disability studies. And it was very difficult for children with autism spectrum disorders to cope with the new normal, especially wearing a mask, continually washing their hands, and maintaining social distancing. Already these children are associated with those who are familiar to them. So it was very difficult for children to keep children in the house during lockdown, or providing a new caregiver during quarantine or isolation, etc. And for children with autism finds it difficult to cope with the new normal, especially healthcare. That was the first and foremost thing, like wearing mask, maintaining social distancing. And in Kerala, we had the Break the Chain campaign initiated by the government of Kerala, and it was a huge impact on breaking the chain of contagion. Then nutrition. Nutrition was a very big issue especially for children with disabilities, and the government tries to provide all the supplies through the Anganwadis, which are the preschools in Kerala, and through schools. Midday meals program was there, and these food were raw food were provided to the houses of children who are studying in the schools. So these were the strategies adopted by the government to address the issues related to nutrition in schools. And in schools, we provide egg, milk, and so other facilities. So the government tried its best to address these needs. Then medical therapies. We have BRCs, that is the basic centers with rehabilitation, block resource centers. Through block resource centers, the rehabilitation professionals try to access children with disabilities at their home, and provide necessary support for children with disabilities. And also the children from the universities, from education colleges, etc., try to approach children and support them directly, and even providing online education to parents, online guidance to parents to support their children at home. And then relationships. It was very huge. There was very huge problem related to relationships and family, especially while the parents were working, or the parents, single parents, especially parents of opposite sex, it was a huge problem. And to associate with friends was a problem for children with other disabilities, especially intellectual disabilities. And there was a problem children were addressing. I mean, the caregivers and the experts were addressing was physical needs, then psychological, emotional, and sexual and social needs. To address these issues was a very huge challenge for persons with disabilities and their caregivers. The challenge faced by children with ASD during COVID-19, especially in families, was, as I mentioned earlier, let us elaborate in later. Institutions, then healthcare, all the healthcare institutions were supposed to get ready for addressing COVID-19 issues, the admissions, etc. So addressing that was a very huge challenge for the government and the institutional setting. And rehabilitation centers. Most of the rehabilitation centers were shut down during COVID-19, and educational support, education institutions were not available. So the government tried to provide educational support to the local channels, etc. Government channels, news channels, and there is a channel called High Pictures, and the government was providing support through educational support through that channel. And it was very huge for the government to address these issues. factors affecting children with ASD in the family. The characteristics of the child with a disability. Children with autism mainly express several types of behaviors, and it was very huge task to address a particular problem of these children, because each and every child is a unique child. So addressing specific issues was a very difficult challenge for the caregivers, for the rehabilitation experts, etc. The characteristics of the child and the characteristics of the family, the single parent family, whether we have nuclear families, joint families, extended families, etc. And if they have children, siblings, also the problem multiplies. The internal and external resources of the family income, social status, etc., were very was to be addressed. Then working parents was a huge issue. They have to go for work, and to keep the child at home was very difficult. And even for financial aspects also, there were huge problems. Then challenges faced by children with ASD in the family. Unmet developmental needs. If we are not providing support to children and their families, there will be very difficult to address the developmental needs of the children. Then unmet medical and therapeutic needs, violation of basic rights in the family. Many of the statistics showed that there were violations of their basic rights, like nurture, love, care, affection, etc. And challenges in institutional care, chances of getting infected. That was a very huge challenge for persons with autism. They are more vulnerable to get infected. And child staff ratio become very difficult during COVID-19, because these staff have to rotate. 1:1 care was not able to provide during this COVID-19 period, because in many of the institutions, the parents, the caregivers have to undergo quarantine several times. So it affected the total management of children with autism. Multiple shifts of caregivers. That was a problem for children with autism, especially because they are not much if they are not familiar with the new caregiver. It will be very difficult situation for the child with autism, because they are one of their most important characteristics itself is to adjust with the or to get adjusted with the new situation, new persons, etc. Risk of physical and sexual abuse. There was another risk was physical and sexual abuse, and the society has to follow the pandemic law, and care of children with intellectual disabilities in the society was still a problem. And during COVID-19, it doubled, because to access the healthcare for autism spectrum disorders was still existing for the existing community. Even the doctors are not well aware of the characteristics of children with autism. I have personal experience with my children's pediatricians, because they are not learning in deep about disabilities. So they are only focused on the pharmacological management. It will be very difficult for even doctors to address the issues. Then community-based rehabilitation programs have to be implemented properly, but during COVID-19 and the nationwide closure of institutions were a big havoc, created big havoc across the country. But Kerala managed to maintain some of these issues, or to address some of the issues, like especially in the medical support. The first thing was Kerala implemented the Break the Chain campaign itself, because Kerala has a history of Nipah virus infection. So the healthcare system was well aware to address a pandemic. So it was easy for it was a bit easy for the government to implement the Break the Chain campaign at the very early stages of infection. So intense awareness campaigns were done, through the Anganwadis, through all the small units of the government, local self-government. Then first line treatment centers were established around 2 lakh bedded first line treatment centers for persons affected with mild symptoms. So it was of huge impact on managing the severe cases of persons with disabilities, so that Kerala could manage or could arrest the death of persons during COVID-19, especially the data shows that we have reduced or reversed excess death rate. So that was the achievement of the government through first line treatment centers. Provision of completely free medical care for infected to the government hospitals, both in FLCTs and government hospitals, and isolation of infected family members of children with disabilities. And these family members and the children with disabilities were given charge, the government has given charges to the block resource teachers for addressing the issues of children with disabilities, especially children with intellectual disabilities. They were given a special mention in the policy. And online medical support for children with disabilities and others who cannot access to direct medical care services. Then children with disabilities during COVID-19, social security. Already the government was giving.
And I could finish within 2 minutes, please.
Yes, sure.
Late.
So the social security, around 28,000 rupees, Indian rupees, is giving to the children with disabilities. And the nutrition, provision of family food kits, then nutritional provision to schools, school meal health program. Then education, online education, and we created a Samuhiga Sannadha Sena with the educated youth of the country and of the state, and they were providing online services, and the channel, through the channel site pictures, we were providing education. Then government has directly provided television, laptops, mobile phones with the help of NGOs, community social responsibility funds, etc. And these are some of the tips which can be given to address the issues related to COVID-19. Family-based awareness educational programs through TV channels with the help of volunteers, and training parents, caregiving to provide necessary educational therapeutic support to children with disabilities. Then prevention of child abuse. There is a Jagrata committee was empowered in the community that they were vigilance volunteers, and we engage toll-free portals, round the clock toll-free portals. And then provision of home-based education care services for student volunteers, peers and rehabilitation professionals, training more volunteers and family members. The inclusive health services, that was one of the most important aspects yet to be addressed in the state. Accessible buildings and healthcare equipment, that is addressing by the government, but still there is a huge gap. Appropriately trained healthcare providers and accessible information about autism spectrum disorder, especially comprehensive and accessible assessment, identification and referral systems, access to decent work and employment. And in conclusion, India currently has the second largest population in the world, and it is projected to overtake top ranking China within 4 years. Hence, empowering the smallest units is the only way to help the children with disabilities, especially children with intellectual disabilities. Better evidence-based practices, systematic and scientific interventions have to be taken to include persons with disabilities in the mainstream of the society during pandemic. Community-based interventions as a strategy helps to address the discrimination existing in the community. The strategy must focus on enhancing the quality of life for children with disabilities and their families to meet their basic needs and ensuring inclusion and participation in their own development. So thank you very much for your patient listening. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Hena, for presenting a very crucial issue that, as you have mentioned, that around millions of children are having disability in any form. And we know that the COVID-19 has made huge disconnectedness. So this is so important, that social isolation and disconnectedness for the autistic children. We know that even more difficult for the parents, for the community. So this is really important how community responses are there. So now I would like to go back to our designated discussant. Habib sir, shall we go to the co-chair or the session guest now?
Thank you, madam. Actually, co-chair couldn't join, and she emailed me some text to share on behalf of her, and she did apologize to all of us because of family problem she couldn't join. So if you allow me, just I can read this on behalf of her for a
Yes,
minute.
please.
She wrote for the short opening of this session, my message is community development is not just essentially local approach to problem solving, but value of human life by coming together to tackle in an ever-changing environment. If we are to look at community development, then we must take in focus the globalization of the economy and the emergence of transnational organizations in relation to social and or economic issues. Community development needs to have an approach to incorporate and implement a global dimension. These conferences are in fact so valuable to bring and set out to reflect both on how global processes affect local communities and ways in which community development workers, social workers can make use of global mechanisms, findings, and learning. A country of action with procedures and policies influenced by community development workers and supported by the country's government. Actually, she shared this for us and wishes us all the best. Thank you, madam. You can take some questions or any queries. Thank you. Madam, you are mute.
I would
Please.
like to request Dr. Anwar Hussain if he wants to make some comments on the papers.
Thanks. Honorable Chair of the session, Professor Salma Akhtar, lauded speakers, and beloved moderator. Good afternoon, especially now, evening, and somewhere it is afternoon. First of all, I would like to thank all of the presenters because they have presented their papers very nicely, and three issues especially. First, Dr. Tiffany presented the mechanisms of her organization, how to address the autism in her country, and then Mr. Toby presented a case how to address how to manage a case in a especially in natural settings. And then Dr. Hena presented the situation of COVID-19 and how the autistic children are disconnected from other society and what kind of impact we have found in earlier in South Asia, especially India and Bangladesh too. That is why we have learned enough from their presentation, and I think it will be helpful for us, especially for the practitioners in Bangladesh. Uh, Autism is also available in Bangladesh, and we know at least 10% people in Bangladesh are suffering from different kind of disability, and one of the disabilities is autism. A lot of children are suffering from autism and they are not able to contact with other persons socially, and in some cases the family have to bear a lot of burdens to maintain them and to rear them. But the service in Bangladesh are not available, though the government has taken some measures in very recent years to address the problems of disabled persons, actually the persons with disability, and all, as well as for the children with autism. Especially, the government has taken some initiatives and established and sent neurodevelopment center at Bangladesh University, Sheikh Mujib University Medical University, that is that was earlier PG hospital, and they are working in this center for identifying the autistic children and providing some services. In other areas of Bangladesh and in Dhaka city, other organizations also providing services, but the services is not adequate compared to the needs of the children. On the other hand, for schooling, education, rehabilitation, the government has also taken some measures, but the measures is not adequate because the government providing some financial supports to the disabled persons under the social safety net program, but the amount of the monthly allowance is too poor to maintain their family. In private section, also some organizations providing services and have taken initiative for the community-based rehabilitation. One of the organization is that Bangladesh Council for Social Welfare, and other organizations providing services, education, etc. But the scope of education for the autistic children is not enough. So far I know, in Bangladesh, there is no scope to manage the case one-to-one. I have observed in some schools that there are some teachers, they provide education and training to the children, but there is no scope to maintain or address the problems of individual children. That is why the children are not getting adequate services. That is very much important for the rehabilitation of the children. So we think that through the discussion of today, we have learned some issues and get information, and through this conference, the authority provide some information to the policymakers as well as to the higher authority of the government, and they will take some measures how we can initiate some programs for addressing the problem of persons with disability, as well, especially for the autistic children, and take measures for managing the case one-to-one. Here, the social workers can deal these problems properly because they have some theoretical knowledge, and in some cases they have some practical knowledge how to address the problems of persons with disability. Especially social casework as well as social action may be applied here to address the problems. And I would like to request the government to appoint social worker at different levels for addressing these problems in Bangladesh. Thanks for listening to me, and I would like to thank again for the authority to tell something in this session. Thank you.
Hello, madam, are you here? All right, most probably our honorable session chair is disconnected. Thank you again to our honorable professor, discussion of the session, Professor Dr. Anwar Hussain. So far I could see 3 presentations from Dr. Tiffany Neal, Mr. Toby from his video practical presentation, and Dr. Hena. Actually, for time constraint, I could guess Dr. Hena and Dr. Tiffany, even if in compared to, actually they have a shorter time. So they have a huge experiences, practical experiences, which is very, very necessary, that really reflected, that is reflected from the voice of Professor Anwar Hussain in Bangladesh, because we don't have dedicated service from our corner to the autistic children in particular, person to person or individual to individual, which is very vital. So I think madam could explain more, but she's not here. It's better we can open the floor for just next 10 minutes. As I declared earlier, we can extend 10 minutes more. So if you have any questions, please raise your hand, or you just start talking within a question or any comment. And I could see my friend Kim from South Korea, Vladimiro from Argentina, Wilkins from Kenya, Maiju from Finland, Anisha from India, Deshpande from India. So many friends, Adi from Philippines. Actually, so many friends are watching this. So if you have anything to ask, please, you can. Tiffany, can you hear me?
Yes.
So as our honorable chair is not here because of need connection, so I think additional time you can take 2-3 minutes to add something more. Actually, because of time constraint, we had to go that way. So please, and no one, so far I could see, ask anything. So please. Tiffany, you are mute.
Yes, sorry, there was a dialog box open, so I couldn't unmute. Sorry, you asked to share additional information?
Yeah,
Is that what you were?
floor is open. No one is asking. That's why I thought, Madam came. Madam, I mean, Honorable Session Chair came, so far, right? Let's see. Madam? All right.
Oh, I'm so sorry I got disconnected. We are having internet problem today. So sorry.
I was giving proxy on behalf of you, right? And
thank you so much.
So, Madam, I extend just 10 minutes, just sharp 10 minutes. So, floor is open. If someone can, you can.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we'd like to request the audience to make any questions or comments if you have to the three presenters, please. Any questions or comments? No questions? Even the presenters can have questions to each other if you like. Or if you like to extend, if the presenters would like to have a little more time. I'm sorry, Tiffany, I couldn't give you much time. So if you like to have few more words, if you like to add, and also Mr. Toby couldn't be in directly talk to us. So any of you, if you like to add some more comments on your presentations, please feel free to do that. Tiffany, would you like to do some more comments? Any more additions to your presentation? Hello.
I'll make a comment, please.
Yeah, sure, please.
Yeah, I'm Kalpana Deshpande from Pune, Tilak Maharashtra Vidyapit, India.
Okay.
And when I was doing Master in Social Work, I was placed in this recreational center that I have just put in the chat box. In Pune, Maharashtra, we have a recreational center for the specially able children. Basically, my point is, all the while we were talking about their health, their nutrition and all, but there is also another major factor about recreation, entertainment. And this particular, setup takes care of various recreational activities, as in making clay objects, drawing, painting, singing, dancing. And I was amazed to see how well the children who were, specially challenged with hearing, they could follow the dance steps. And there were also these autistic children who were taught various activities like painting and all. So my point is, recreation is a very important factor that has to be offered to these children, especially able children or autistic children. Thank you.
Thank you, Kalpana Deshpande. You have added a very crucial issue, because we always think about very practical learning, but we forget about the mental health, and recreation helps a lot in stress relief. Thank you. Mr. Toby, if you like to add anything on your presentation.
I don't really have anything to add to my presentation, but you know, I always think it's just a really major challenge in developing countries. You know, I work in a lot of places in Asia, and I just know it must be a real challenge for you social workers to be, you know, knowing that perhaps the children are in need of a lot of services and intervention that you know all about, but having the challenges of resources and money and all of the things that maybe come a little easier in other countries. So it must be just an immensely challenging job and an immensely challenging situations working in, you know, some of the countries where you guys are representing. So I fully applaud your efforts and challenges, and it's wonderful to talk today. But I know in different parts of the world, this kind of work can be very, very challenging.
Thank you, Mr. Toby. And I think Dr. Hena wanted to add something.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Tiffany and Dr. Toby and all
In
the
short,
other.
please. Yeah.
Thank you. And I have shared a video which we have inaugurated a center, a National Institute of Physical Medicine and Rehabilitation in Kerala for children with intellectual disabilities and other autism spectrum disorders. We have, in Kerala. We have a sensory park in Kerala, and so many activities are initiated for persons with disabilities. You can have a look at, I have shared it in the chat box. And so many activities. We, as a center in MG University also, we have a center called DREAMS, that is Disability Rehabilitation, Early Assessment and Rehabilitation Services. So through which we are providing community-based services, early intervention services and other activities. So it'll be wonderful to know about the activities, similar activities across the world, and even in Kerala, in India, Maharashtra, as Dr. Kalpana said. Thank you very much. Thank you. If you want any further information related to this, you can just have email to our center also. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Is there any more question or any more comment? If Professor Habib or somebody else has any questions?
So far, no, madam.
I have some questions actually. Developing countries like Bangladesh, here in Bangladesh, I've seen that there's a huge gap between fathers and their, parents and their childs as well. In that case, if a child becomes autistic by physical or psychological, it's really very hard for them to understand the child, and for the child too to understand their parents as well. I've seen some educated family as well, where as that the child suffering from psychological disorder, and she can't communicate with their parents and whatever. But the thing here, if I generalize the thing that the gap between parents and the child, it's a huge. And when I try to think about that disabled people who are mostly mentally disabled, how can we reduce this gap between parents and child?
To whom you are questioning it? If you have any particular whom you are addressing this?
I'm Ishtiakushan Naik.
No, I mean, you were expecting from whom of the speakers you are expecting to get the answers, or it's open question?
It was an open question. Whoever feels okay
so
to answer this.
Among the speakers,
can I make a comment, please, ma'am?
Please, sure.
Thank you, ma'am. Actually, he very rightly pointed out, but the main reason is acceptance. I've seen many parents, they do not accept the fact that the child is challenged. And that is why there is a lot of delay. they just, they are under false, conviction that over the period of time, the child will improve. And that is why there is a lot of gap between seeking help. First of all, accepting and then approaching somebody for help, finding help, and then, helping the child. So basically, I think this problem can be tackled if, first of all, we accept, the parents accept and immediately seek trained help. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. I think the issue I was mentioning in the first time, that social stigma is an issue. I mean, parents themselves can't accept this because the people react really in a very negative way in the society whenever the children are going outside in the school or peer group or elsewhere. So social attitude change is so important. And I think that as Dr. Hina was presenting, and also Dr. Tiffany were presenting, that a social integrated approach is so important in this regard. So if we don't have any more questions, I would like to thank three of our presenters, Dr. Tiffany, Mr. Toby, and Dr. Hina, for wonderful presentations. And it was a very timely but neglected issue, because we know that huge number of people and children are becoming autistic all over the world, both developed and developing country. And we know that as Mr. Toby was mentioning, that actually this is so important to have a contextualization, because obviously when it's very expensive, countries like us or the different social class can approach or accept that. So I think social tolerance, social acceptability is so important, and social connectivity. I mean, the issue of the conference, disconnection, social connectivity is so important. So I'd like to thank all of you, and again my gratefulness and gratitude and appreciation to Professor Habibur Rahman for organizing such a wonderful and very timely, I would say very timely issues. And I would say that a huge number of participants I could see in all of the programs attending despite the very difficult situation, which means that issues are important. These are very contemporary social issues, and these are very much close to our hearts. So I'd like to thank everybody, and Professor Habib, and back to you, Professor Habib.
All right, Honorable Session Chair, Honorable Discussant, co-chairs absent here, and three distinguished panel speakers. Really, you made my efforts honored today, because I tried to communicate Hong Kong Autism Partnership and to Mr. Toby, and I'm very happy to see him here in person. I requested several times that Mr. Toby, I know he's very busy, but he needs to be here. We will be happy to see him. Very happy, really, Mr. Toby. Thanks again. Thank you. And Tiffany Neal, she is extremely busy, but Tiffany Neal finally made it possible to be here in person. Tiffany, again, our best wishes and regards to you. And Dr. Hina also, very short notice. Dr. Hina, after his busy schedule, she managed her time to join us. And of course, not only the speakers, honorable discussant made his time possible for us, and the participants, our friends that I mentioned earlier, Mr. Supri Kim from Korea, Vladimiro from Argentina, Wilkins from Kenya, and friends from Adi from Philippines, and so Maju from Finland, many friends from India. Actually, it's tough to mention their name, and they're inboxing me here. So lastly, we are inviting you to watch our tomorrow's session, tomorrow sharp at 9 a.m. There is two parallel technical session, just sharp at 11:30 to 1:30 p.m. There is another two session, and of course, tomorrow sharp at 8 p.m. Bangladesh time, there is a closing session. Hope you all will be there. Of course, we'll send you the link, and that would be wonderful closing. Simple, but that would be definitely exciting closing tomorrow. So till then, I think with the permission of Honorable Session Chair, we would love to conclude this, and we are running after shortage of energy, but still we are completely boosted up. This is ending for the third day of this 4th International Conference hosted by Community Social Work Practice and Development Foundation. Thank you once again, and hope to see you tomorrow morning. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kim, thank